Well, hello. I'm Matt Williamson. How you doing? Just finished the Postgame show with Mike Preseason and just got home. Break down this game. Let's not overreact. That's all I'm going to say right off the bat. I don't think the Lions could have taken that game any less seriously. And frankly, the second half of that game was about as inconsequential of NFL football that you will ever see. But, as Coach Tomlin said, the goals were pretty much accomplished. I forget how he phrased it, but he wanted to see production in a stadium in the preseason, and they got that. The early stuff was great, and that's what matters. Like I said, the second half was pretty darn inconsequential. I'm very happy that the preseason is over. Psyched for the regular season. Side note along those lines. Always open to ideas. There's this stretch here, surprisingly, after the initial roster gets set, can be a little quiet in terms of content. So if there's something you guys want, let me know. I'm all ears. That being said, no Cam, no Watt, no Highsmith, no Porter, no Peyton Wilson, although he did clear concussion protocol, and I think he would have played if needed, or if this was the Atlanta game. And one of my notes was hopefully very little nausea with the Warren injury. We talked about that yesterday. He got one carry, which he looked great, and didn't touch the ball again and got him out of the game. Also, of course, Roman Wilson didn't play. Fatanu didn't play. Matakevich sat. I'm not sure why. Moon never got in the game. Holcomb, of course. Dylan Cook never played. And Lee didn't play either, the draft pick. I have a theory on Lee. I think he is fighting something, but I think he's going to have a tough time making this team, and I think they like him, and I don't think they wanted to put any more tape out there for someone to claim him. So I think it would be easier with him not playing in this game and maybe, quote, being a little injured to sneak him back on the practice squad without any problem, which I don't think is a huge, issue either way. We'll talk about roster building and things like that at the time when we do other podcasts. But I thought the Lions were really horrific in this game. Backups everywhere, bad penalties, sloppy, and just bad players on the field. And not a general lack of caring, but it was pretty obvious that the organization was not too concerned with this. A couple injuries of note that I'm a little worried about, but Trice and Watts both left the game and didn't return. Although Watts, there was hardly any time on the clock. And these are guys I have a lot of hope and faith in. Well, not faith. I have a lot of hope and excitement around. And they're going to need them. So let's just pay attention to those. I thought the defensive front, though, early on when it mattered, led by Herbig, who every time he plays, no matter what the situation is, the most uneducated of fans would be like, he's good. He's making plays. He makes a play every game he's involved in. If he plays 5 snaps, 20 snaps, he's really a good player. And I truly think on the edge, he would start for half the league. And they have him as a 3, which is great. But the whole defensive front was just utterly dominated. And I thought the Steelers dominated the first quarter. The Lions were the better team in the second quarter. Okay, that's fine. But I thought when it mattered most with that defensive front, minus the people we talked about, against a backup offensive line, and a backup quarterback and backups everywhere, Steelers totally dominated, as did their ones on both sides of the ball. The first quarter belonged to the Steelers. This episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. From the preseason NFL to college kicking off, BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our winner-take-all $300,000 NFL Survivor pool for the upcoming season. When the game's over, head over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today and use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, all caps, and get in on the action. Bet online. The game starts here. As you know, I'm going to when I recap games, I often bring up stats. I don't think stats were very important in this game. But I did think at the half, it was interesting to me that the Steelers were averaging 4.3 yards per play. The Lions were only averaging 3.3 yards per play. Huge discrepancy at the half. The Steelers were obviously better on pivotal downs, as Coach Tomlin mentioned, with the top units. Third downs, driving the ball down the field. A lot of the stuff you guys weren't thrilled about, dump-offs, didn't occur, and they were aggressive throwing the ball down the field. Only one incomplete pass in the first half by the Steelers. Pretty impressive. So these are just kind of my halftime notes, I'm obviously in the midst of here. There were 9 total sacks in the first half of this game. And I didn't think the Steelers' O-line was particularly bad in that regard, but it wasn't great again. But the fact there were 9 total sacks in the first half wasn't ideal, on one side, of course. I love that Patterson came in immediately for Najee. I mean, my most recent podcast, that's what I was hoping for. But he didn't stay in long. He made a big play, but didn't stay in long. 31-yard touchdown. Obviously, that was gigantic. A huge hole. I mean, that was great to see. I mentioned that Porter didn't start. I think it's noteworthy that Trice did in his place, which I mentioned before. He left this game with injury. I've been told, and this implies that he's pretty clearly the number 3 outside corner. If Porter or Jackson were to get hurt, Trice would be a starter. I loved seeing a lot of not only Herbig off the edge, but Leal, and the two of them together, and they would swap sides. So I think there's a real good chance that they only keep 3 outside linebackers, and Leal, not that he moves there full time, but he would be the 4th. I thought the nickel situation was interesting. Bishop dressed, but number 37, Graham, is acting as a starter. He was in there for quite a bit. So that might need to work itself out, but I think the writing's on the wall. They like Graham better than Bishop. Lowry also saw some time with the starters on a deep defensive line. I liked seeing that. What else we got here? Oh, some other notes. The jammers, on the punt return team, the guys that jam the gunners. A lot of Rush and Trice there. And Rush and Miller, Scotty Miller, were gunners. And I just wrote, Miller, really? Watts also saw action at gunner. I think Rush is establishing himself as the best gunner. But I'm going to come back to Miller in that I don't know if he can tackle a soul. He's not Boykin in terms of physicality from a wide receiver position. But the fact that he was doing some gunner stuff, he's obviously fast enough, makes me think he's probably going to make the team. If we have to, you're going to be active on Sunday. Can you not embarrass yourself as a gunner? So I thought that was a good sign for him. I would take that as a compliment. A name I didn't even know is number 31, Zion Gilbert. I'm not saying that this guy's a diamond in the rough or some great find, but he played a lot early in this game, usually in the dime, defensive back. And if Trice or Watts or one of these guys is injured, maybe Zion Gilbert's a name we need to know more about. I thought Graham stayed in the nickel for quite some time. The late game Steeler O-line, really bad. I mean, total garbage. I mean, I've been telling you that since camp started, though, that the first starting 5 and backup 5, when everybody was healthy, Herbig, etc., were really strong starting 10. After that, drops off a cliff, and that showed up in this game, too. None of those guys are going to make the team, though, folks, so who cares? Then I have some second half notes, which I don't take a whole lot of stock in their importance. But Bishop finally came in the nickel. Real nice deep ball to Fitzpatrick by Allen, and he had 2 nice deep throws. Sutton's INT off a tip with a decent return. There was a legal block in the back, though, but you like to see the guys that are NFL players out there looking better than everybody else and making plays. Allen's going to be in the league. Sutton's going to be in the league. So that was good stuff there. Gilbert, who I mentioned, Zion Gilbert, he caused a fumble and recovered. But Tomlin didn't challenge. We got a lot of calls, and I'd say rightfully so, on the post-game show about that. What's going on with this challenge system. Kind of brush it off that it's preseason, but it's something to pay attention to. I know you guys don't care much about the Lions' backups, but I think Hendon Hooker, their quarterback for much of this game, is a really interesting player because he was getting first-round buzz coming out of Tennessee and then suffered a really bad injury and then sat out all last year, basically the redshirt year, which everybody knew was going to happen on draft day, that his rookie year would be shot. But I can see why they're kind of excited about him. I mean, Sudfeld's there too, but Hooker played a lot in this game. And they had some good drives against, and late in the game, Jamar Jefferson had 2 touchdowns. He's a drafted running back as well. He's not a total nobody. Plumlee came in the game finally with like 12 and a half minutes left in the game. But more noteworthy to me was they put McCormick at center. All my draft coverage, I hope you listened to. I thought, other than the top 3 centers, Frazier, Powers Johnson, Barton, that McCormick would have been the next best center. And I think he's going to do a lot more reps at center. Not that he's a bad guard. It's just that's something that's going to be on the horizon for him. Jake Fromm came in this game with 11 minutes left. Not really notable. Probably didn't even need to write that down. And same with these final stats. There's a handful of final stats that I just wanted to throw out there because I even write, are these even notable? Notable stats. Really, are they notable, Matt? I don't know. But Detroit had 28 first downs compared to 11 for the Steelers. They ran 74 plays compared to 43 for the Steelers. Controlled the clock for 35-31 as opposed to 24-29. Had 187 rushing yards compared to just 78 for the Steelers. 73 of those were by Hendon Hooker on 10 carries. And the Lions also had 10 penalties. Only for 45 yards, but it's a lot of penalties. Steelers had 7 for 54. Herbig and Welshoff each had 2 sacks each. Herbig's a terror. And that's all I got. They're 0-3 in the preseason. That doesn't bother me. I think we all have a much better taste in our mouth right now than we did after the last game. And they accomplished the things that they wanted to lay out for this game. What are our real goals? Well, they accomplished it and built a little bit of momentum going into the regular season. All right, everyone. It's been a long day. I've started the pregame show at 9 a.m. and I'm recording this about 12 hours later. So that's a wrap for me. Over and out.